Welcome back to Insight Review as we look back on the defining stories of the past 7 days. The Tunisian captain of a refugee ship that sank while travelling from Libya to Europe has been jailed for 18 years. More than 700 people died when the overcrowded former fishing vessel rammed into a Portuguese container ship. TRT World's Sarah Morris has some details.
This is the fishing boat after it was recovered from the seabed. When it sank, it was carrying up to 800 migrants from several countries, including Algeria, Somalia and Senegal. The court was told the boat capsized when it collided with this Portuguese merchant ship that was coming to its aid. Prosecutors say Mohammed Ali Malek mishandled the overloaded vessel, causing the collision. Only 28 people survived the shipwreck. Many of those killed were trapped in the boat's hull. Public outrage over the incident prompted the EU to increase its search and rescue capabilities in the Mediterranean.
Well, still with me to discuss this and other stories, Farah Nayeri and Michael Goldfarb. Farah, this of course is just one case in an extraordinary number of journeys like this, which also end in death for most of the occupants of the vessel. I mean, this was a fishing boat, basically, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. It was a fishing boat, and it really is an example of something that keeps happening over and over. And I believe that this verdict is crucially important because an example has to be set. They cannot carry on doing this human trafficking with impunity. There's a lot of money involved. Newsnight and the Reuters basically uncovered or investigated another such incident in 2016, which was the biggest sinking of the year. And basically what they said was that this boat left Egypt's shores and not Libya's, and Egypt has not done anything to chase or to prosecute, find the culprits. So I believe that this Catania court in Sicily has done, possibly a service to humanity by putting this guy in jail for his
Michael?
I just have to disagree on that, because I think clearly the message about the dangers of this passage, the message which needs to get below the Sahara, these are mostly sub-Saharan Africans, or they're coming from the Horn of Africa and making incredible journeys just to get to the Mediterranean coast in Libya or Egypt, wherever they embark from. Look, it's not getting through. And making an example of the captain, I think this is simply, they managed to find the culprit, someone was culpable, and they've given him some justice. But I can't extrapolate from that any grand thing about this finally having a deterrent effect on the people smuggling rings.
The message won't be impacted
but
by
also
this.
there's too much money
his
involved,
defence, of course, was that he wasn't actually, he was in some kind of victim himself, that some kind of people trafficker person made him steer the ship. Now, whether we believe him or not, clearly the court didn't. But I mean, nevertheless, people are taking risks with other people's lives to this extraordinary degree. But 600, 700 souls on one boat.
The amounts of money that's been reported that people are paying to get on boats like that.
They'll have probably paid $1,000, or that order of magnitude.
And you look at the conditions in which, I mean, I value my money. If I give somebody 1,000 quid, and you say, I'm not getting on that. I want to see, for God's sake. Look, the desperation of people to make this journey, is something that overwhelms the logic of making an example.
Well, I agree, except this is a very important first step. I think we cannot ignore the fact that these people smugglers have been acting with complete impunity. As I just said, they've left the shores of Egypt, and according to this BBC and Reuters investigation, and the government of Egypt, according to that investigation, has done absolutely nothing to chase the people who did this.
But the southern Mediterranean coastline, all around Libya and all the places there, it comes west into Tunisia and things like that. Boats are leaving these shores, aren't they? Overloaded
it's a small step, but I think it's a first step, and I think we've got to start somewhere. Right. So far, we've had complete impunity.
All right, well, let's move on to Brazil now, shall we? And this week, the Brazilian Senate has taken the controversial decision to cap public spending for the next 2 decades. Yes, you heard that right. 2 decades. It's been seen as a victory for the new president, Michel Temer, who had pushed for spending reform. The decision led to protests and demonstrations outside the Senate building and in large cities. Those on the streets claim that policies of austerity unfairly target the poorest in society. Opposition leaders denounced the cuts, saying that they would affect health and education programs the most.
There is nothing to say. You can't just throw away or freeze the future of millions of Brazilians for 20 years. Today, the senators approved a great step backwards for the whole country.
Well, Farah and Michael are with me. It's something to announce your programme for 20 years. I think that must be unprecedented, isn't it?
Yes, it's unprecedented, but we also have to bear in mind, that it becomes even more difficult because Brazil is going through the worst recession since the 1930s, possibly in its entire history, and that people are actually describing it as a depression. I mean, unemployment has gone from 7 million to 11 million. The GDP growth of Brazil in the first quarter of this year,
right?
It's tanking. It's basically the economy has shrunk 5.4% in the year to the first quarter of 2016. So I mean that's when we remember the boom years of Brazil, which were just 2 days ago, what feels like. This is a situation that's in a way really heartrending and very difficult for the people of Brazil. On the other hand, you should also bear in mind that this is a kind of an economy with a kind of socialism overhang, that there are lots of areas of it that are ossified, that the labor laws and the markets, etc., need reform, and that public spending in Brazil has been rising by 6% a year on average for the last 20 years. So those are the coefficients.
So this was a nettle that had to be grasped sometime, Michael?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, look, I don't know Brazilian politics that well, but I do know that the previous president was impeached by the current president who led the charge, and he too has some corruption accusations, allegations hanging over him. And he doesn't, I don't think he faces the electorate now until 2019.
No, he's
18.
just come in, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a couple of years. So in a sense, it strikes me as being almost a bit of a distraction. You say, well, I'm going to put in place this policy that's going to last for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Will he be there in 2 decades? He's 75. I mean, he's not Bob Dole.
Well, clearly not. But it's maybe a message that he doesn't expect people to take literally. Is he sort of talking to the global banking community? Is he talking to other economists?
I think that...
I say I'm serious
he's
about
behind.
reform.
No, but I mean, in a sense, he's almost behind the times, because I think that here, I mean, in the U.S., we're about to find out. I mean, I think Donald Trump is probably quite sincere about expanding government spending to help. I mean, he made promises to a lot of people who are in a shadow world of employment. They're not any longer in the good jobs they once had 20 years ago. He's going to cut taxes and spend. I mean, this is the new. You're going to become a new orthodoxy. Meanwhile, down in Brazil, they're still following the same old IMF, OECD orthodoxy. You got to have austerity. You got to balance your books.
Except they had Lula. They had Lula for a while. So they've gone through really kind of great swings between.
The question is, do the people of Brazil still want a Lula-esque world?
Exactly.
My guess is, from the pictures we've seen, that they probably do. So, the 20-year austerity, it won't last 20 years. And will this government last if they try and really push down on the pedal with it?
Yeah.
You've seen those shots. It won't get better.
It's very difficult, but also, I mean, the fact is that a former central banker is leading all these, economic reforms, or trying to. So you have this kind of new team that's coming in with a kind of very, staunch economic reform program. But how do you chime that with a population that is really going the other way?
I don't know. I really don't know. It seems like a hideous mismatch, and I don't suppose we're going to solve it in the next few seconds. Farah and Michael, great to be with you today. Thank you very much indeed for being part of our programme. We end it, as we always do, with an Insight Bite. This is just a little something that we feel you should know. And this week, it's the internet and the fundraising phenomenon, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Remember this? Pete Frates, the creator of the famous challenge, has received the US NCAA Inspiration Award for his efforts to promote the campaign against the disease. ALS, which stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, is a form of motor neurone disease. Mr. Frates was diagnosed at the age of 27 when he was captain of the Boston College baseball team. The award is reserved for individuals involved with college sport who give hope and inspiration to those who face life-altering situations. Well, thanks to this campaign, the viral charity exercise has gone right around the world, and it raised millions of dollars for research into the disease. And that's all from me for now. I'm Martin Standford. That was Insight Review.